If you've been podcasting consistently and wondering why your show isn't growing the way you hoped it would, then this video is for you. I'm breaking down for you exactly what I did to make my podcast grow in 2025. So keep watching to find out how I did it. Hey my friends, welcome to my channel. I'm Demetria and I help solopreneurs launch and grow their podcasts with confidence. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, thanks for dropping by. And if you are looking for this kind of content to help you with your podcast, go ahead and hit that bell and subscribe because I've got a lot of podcast support for you on this channel. All right, we're going to start with some podcasting growth strategies that actually matter and what I use to help me to grow in 2025. And the first thing is that I took a long, hard look at my SEO. So if you don't know what SEO is, I do have a video that I'm going to show that I'm going to put right here or here so that you can take a look at it. It'll also be in the description. But SEO is search engine optimization, and it's the best way to optimize your titles, your meta tags, your keywords, your description, everything about your podcast every time you release an episode so that search engines are more apt to know how to categorize your content and you're going to be more easily found in those search engines, as well as AI. So we're going to talk about that at some point too, because that's important nowadays. But what I did is I cut out all the vagueness, no more vague titles. So when I titled my episodes, I made sure that it actually drove home a point and it solved a problem. And I've been updating my back catalog because a lot of my titles were so vague. For example, strategic branding or lifestyle hacks for entrepreneurs and solopreneurs. They were very vague. They weren't specific. They didn't solve a problem. So I went back and I retitled my episodes so that they're more eye-catching and they pop out at my listeners so that they actually want to listen, right? When they're viewing and they're scanning those titles of episodes that they might want to tune into on their Apple Podcasts or Spotify, they see titles they really like because it actually solves a problem. So I went back and I changed some of my episode titles. For example, some of mine now are how to stop overthinking and just launch your podcast finally. Or when you feel like quitting your podcast, then what? How to stay consistent with podcasting. 3 podcasting myths that keep creators stuck. And one that I really like was let's set your podcast content strategy plan for the next year. And so what that does is it allows my listeners to know exactly what they're going to hear on that episode. And if it's going to solve their problem right then and right there, they're going to stop what they're doing. They're going to make time in their schedule to listen to the episode because it's going to solve their problems. So I went back through my long list of episode titles that just were so vague and really didn't solve anything. And I changed those titles to attract my potential listeners. So now they really want to listen. You might also notice that I'm using keywords. Okay. So one of the keywords I used in the most recent title was podcast growth hacks, because I know that this is something people are looking for. So in order to have a keyword rich podcast title, you have to know what keywords people are typing in to Google to find the information they want. And so that's where keyword tools come in handy. I happen to like one called Key Search, and I use it all the time to help me find keywords that are relevant to my industry of podcasting. And so whatever your industry is, whatever you do as an entrepreneur, find the keywords that people are looking for, make a keyword list bank, and keep those keywords handy so that whenever you're making content, for example, for your podcast or your blog or your newsletter, whatever you're doing that goes out to your audience, that you have a list of keywords at hand that people are looking for. You're going to integrate those keywords into your description, into your titles, and every part of your podcast show notes. Everything is going to be infused with your keywords. The long game of SEO also requires that I integrate AI into my planning. And so the best way to do that is to figure out your routine and your schedule for how you like to create your content. What's your flow look like, right? So for me, as I'm sitting down with my episode ideas, I do an idea bank, and then I have a keyword bank. And before I get started with any episodes, I'm doing research. on what to talk about, and eventually that comes together to create my episodes. I use AI to help me pull all of this together. So I'm using ChatGPT and Claude and all the things to help me figure out how I want to phrase what I want to say on my podcast episodes. And a lot of times AI is helping me with an idea bank. It's helping me with titles for the episode. And it also helps me with how I want to flow in the discussion of what I'm sharing on those episodes. So I'm using AI to help me with my formatting and with my titles, my description, all of the things that I'm doing even pre-publication and post-publication. So fit AI into your planning system to help you make things go faster. Although keyword strategy was a huge part of what I did to grow my podcast in 2025, there are a couple more things that I'm going to mention very briefly and that I'll share more in another video, because these were other ways that helped me to grow. And they are being intentional with what social media platforms I showed up on. And so I found out that Instagram and LinkedIn were two of my favorites, and I began to really start seeing some success with my YouTube shorts. So figure out where you want to be and stay there. If you don't like being on that platform, don't hang out there. And for me, I don't especially like TikTok, so I don't hang out at TikTok that often. But I do have a presence on all of these platforms just because I need to have my name and my company on those platforms. But where I like to hang out is where my potential clients are going to be. And so that's Instagram and LinkedIn. Remember, you're not trying to dominate every platform. So figure out where you believe your clients are hanging out and go to those platforms and spend time there. You can also use guesting, which is being a podcast guest, as a strategy for growing your podcast this year. So there are great platforms out there that can help you as a matchmaker to match you up with podcasts that will fit what you are trying to offer to your audience. And they'll promote you and your work and your expertise to their audience and introduce you to them. So I loved guest podcasting this year. I showed up on about 5 or 6 different podcasts as a guest. And I believe that helped me to grow my own platform. I recommend services like Podmatch to help you figure out how to be a guest on some of these awesome podcasts out there that already have platforms that you will want to be introduced to. Go on a mini podcast tour over the summer. Maybe that's something you could do during the summer if it doesn't work for you throughout the year, and just try it out and see how you enjoy being a guest. There's no pressure. It's just about you showing up and sharing your expertise. And the result is that you get listeners back to your show. That's exactly what you want. And remember, your downloads themselves is not the end goal. So whether you get 50,000 downloads or 200 downloads, the end goal is essentially how you're able to show up. Your thought leadership matters. Your client trust matters. Speaking opportunities is another way you can measure your success of your podcast and whether or not your life has changed because of your podcast. Personally, I went from just a few listeners back in 2023 to a huge growth moment in the most recent months. And I'm so excited to see how my podcasts have exploded and have grown. And it took time for them to grow. They didn't necessarily explode overnight. They had to grow sustainably and consistently over time because I was showing up and I was doing the work even when I only had 5 listeners. So I'm inviting you to be encouraged in your podcasting journey. Remember that only about 10% of podcasters are considered established podcasters according to Podmatch 2025. And of that 10%, that particular group holds about 95% of listening. How I interpret that is that podcasters tend to quit too soon in the game. You need to have a milestone. So have your mindset geared toward the milestone that works best for you. And maybe that milestone is 100 episodes. Maybe you just want to reach that 100th episode. So let's do it. Remember, consistency pays off. So keep going, go at your own pace, but go at a reasonable pace for you and for the expectation that your audience has. So what I want to encourage you to do is not to feel like you have to be everywhere. Growth doesn't mean being all over the place. You could use SEO and podcast guesting and consistency as a way to grow your show over and above trendiness. Remember that downloads don't define the measure of your success, and community is your real asset. So once you've done all these things, having a community of listeners that truly love what you bring to the table and can't wait to listen to your shows every week is your measuring stick. Check out in the show notes my Launch Confidently podcasting checklist. I'd love for you to get a hold of that. I also offer podcast audits and a free coffee chat for those of you who want to know more about how podcasting can be helpful to you in your business. Until the next video, don't forget to hit the bell and subscribe, and I'll see you right back here next time. Happy podcasting.